Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained. I am Jim Kelgard. That's right, Jim with two M's. Why? Well, my mama dropped me on my head more than once, obviously, right? Anyhow, folks, I am excited to talk about this recap that we're doing tonight, where we are doing episode number 7 of season 5 of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch docuseries. And with me, as always, is my brother from another mother, my awesome co-host and co-creator of The Soul of the Unexplained, Mr. Rogelio Roger Stokes. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing great. So excited to be here tonight to talk about, honestly, one of the best episodes, not only of season five so far, but of the entire Secret of Skinwalker Ranch series. I know I've talked to you behind the scenes, both you and I, just jaw-dropping, mind blown. Like, yeah, I think this is probably going to be a little bit more difficult episode for me just to express my views on this, but I'm super excited. So thank you, all of our subscribers and anyone new out there. Welcome to the Soul of the Unexplained. Jim and I, we have a lot to discuss tonight, and we're so happy to have you along.
Absolutely. And we're going to dive right into it, folks. And like Roger says, a very, very big welcome to all of our new subscribers. And special tip of the hat to our dear friend Jeff Freeman over at the J Free 906 podcast for giving us the kind shout out during his recap that happened this evening as well. Folks, Jeff Freeman and the J Free 906 podcast on YouTube is for me the gold standard of Skinwalker Ranch and Curse of Oak Island related podcasting. Jeff is just a superstar. He's just an awesome human being, and the co-hosts and the guests that he brings on, particularly Shannon and Mike Owen. I mean, holy cow, Mike is like Eric Bard Jr. with just how wonderfully articulate he is in explaining some of the more scientific and going deep down the scientific and engineering and physics rabbit hole that is well over the heads of many of us, myself included in particular. So, folks, if you haven't ever checked out the J Free 906 podcast right here on YouTube, strongly encourage you to do that right. Well, okay, not right now. Watch this episode first, and then go watch Jeff to find out what our real podcast is like, right? Instead of our cheap ass no frills kind of podcast. But massive gratitude and thanks to Jeff for his constant friendship and support. So, folks, we're going to dive right in right now to episode number 7 of season 5 of the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. This episode is entitled "The Cone Zone," and before we start with the recap here, just real quickly, folks. Um, I know that I'm a man of many words, and I'm one of the more loquacious folks out there. But this is honestly this episode, what unfolded in this particular episode has truly left me speechless in many, many ways. I mean, I watched the show last night. We're coming up on 24 hours since I viewed it, and I still can't effectively articulate exactly what I think, what is going through my mind, how I feel about what I saw unfold on this episode that we're about to talk about. And I know that I'm not the only one because I literally, during the entire broadcast, my phone was lighting up like crazy from friends of mine who are fellow Skinwalker Ranch insiders, like Roger and I both are, people that are not Skinwalker Ranch insiders, but that subscribe to our podcast. Thank you. And friends of mine and family members that casually watch the show that are kind of like they've been on the fence, like, is this all really just entertainment and nonsense, or is there really something to it? And I had one friend in particular, and I won't mention his name to protect his privacy, but he actually sent me a lengthy test saying, I've been watching this show for the last 2 years. And he says, what happened in tonight's episode, I think, has made me a believer. in the fact that what is going on at Skinwalker Ranch is no BS, that there's really something genuinely extraordinary that takes place out there on this remote ranch in northeastern Utah. And for this guy to say this to me, he is about as dyed in the wool of a skeptic as you could ever come across. And he's finally starting to pay attention because I said, that's all you got to do. All you got to do is just take the time to watch the episodes. Because if you're just watching an episode here or there, you're going to be lost and you're not going to have the context that goes with how these episodes run. And so he's been doing that. He's been taking my advice rather grudgingly up to this point. And now he realizes that, holy crap, there's really something quantifiably, unbelievably, insanely incredible going on at this ranch that just defies all logic and mundane and prosaic explanation. And that is just one of the many things, Roger, that draws me into this whole Skinwalker Ranch rabbit hole. And this rabbit hole, particularly with this episode, goes to depths that I never expected and was not mentally prepared for when I watched the episode last night. I mean, it truly caught me by surprise. How about you?
Yeah, yeah. No, I am right there with you, Jim. I don't think that I don't think I have an eloquent way tonight to share my thoughts in a coherent scientific manner in which some people can do just because of what happened in the episode is so mind-blowing. It just, as I told you earlier, I this this episode and what is contained in it, like honestly, this should be in the world news across multiple news channels across the world, right? Like this is something that's so to me earth-shattering, time-altering, mind-bending that it merits a ton of discussion from the world's greatest minds. And the fact that what we're going to be talking about here in a bit is not only been backed up by previous data on Skinwalker Ranch, but is just being shown to people like you and I, just regular folk, people that are going about their day, their lives here, right? And like this is game changing, 100%. And I do hope that this topic um, is picked up and more discussion happens because like I can't wait to start talking about it because Jim, I'm just literally like last night, just briefly talking with you. I was at a loss for words and yeah, if you haven't seen the episode yet and don't put the podcast down, go watch this episode, come back and take a listen because it's truly mind-bending. So let's jump in. Uh, Jim, I think you're on mute.
That's what I get for putting myself on mute to cough. Sorry,
No, it's
folks.
all good. It's
But
all good.
so yeah, I mean, spoilers ahead for sure if you haven't watched this episode yet. So this is one you're going to want to see before you watch our recap, folks. But as I was saying while I was still on mute, um, as my phone was lighting up last night from all these people kind of losing their mind over what they were seeing, and it was hard for me, Roger, because some of these people are on the East Coast, and of course you and I are here in the Mountain Time Zone, which is 2 hours behind or about an hour behind as far as the broadcast goes, and so usually, I mean, a fair amount of the time when something is getting hyped up that much, I try not to, you know, allow myself to get too psyched up because I don't want to end up being disappointed. But this is one of those rare times where it lived up to the hype of the texts and phone calls that I was receiving from people. I mean, I at least a dozen texts and two phone calls before I even got to watch the show. People saying, "Holy crap! Can you believe what's going on? This is just absolutely insane. It's bonkers." And I'm just like, okay, not going to get my hopes up, but yeah, Roger, this it was, if anything, they were underselling it to me about how truly remarkable it is that the things that unfolded in that episode. So, putting on the four eyes now, and we'll begin doing our recap. So, again, episode 7, the Cone Zone. So the episode begins with Thomas meeting up with Alex and Jared from Mark Construction at the base of the mesa just west of the triangle. Their intention is to resume drilling the two boreholes on either side of the anomaly inside the mesa, if you'll recall from last week's episode. Travis then recounts the incident from back in 2021 when they had Aaron Blunt's Sure Shot drilling team on the ranch drilling horizontally into the mesa, and how that drill hit something impenetrable in the mesa. And the spoils, if you'll recall, Roger, were taken from the drill shaft and revealed large flakes of what seemed like metal. So they took these flakes of metal and had them sent off to the University of Utah for analysis. And the analysis by the University of Utah revealed that these metal flakes were comprised of the rare elements europium and tellurium, and that this was not a natural process that fused these two elements together in forming this metal. It was noted that the elements contained in these metal flakes are what is used by NASA on spacecraft re-entering Earth's atmosphere as a heat shield. So Travis also mentions the new GPR survey done by Jan Franke that was done this season that shows not only the large 400-foot long anomaly in the mesa, but several other smaller objects inside the mesa that resemble some kind of debris field. And 2 days prior to this day on the ranch, Travis tells us that Mark Construction's drilling was going perfectly until the drill bit hit an obstruction roughly 40 feet inside the mesa that forced the drill and the drill rods and pipes upward and a trajectory that would have sent them, protruding out of the mesa before it got to its desired destination. And just then, they detected a strange radio signal at 31 megahertz, if you'll recall, Roger, from inside the mesa of all places. Now, the team has moved, and this is back to the current episode. The team has moved their drilling rig several feet back from where it was initially and started to drill a new borehole into the side of the mesa. And Travis re-emphasizes that they don't want to damage whatever's inside the mesa. So the plan is to drill two holes on either side of this large dome-shaped anomaly that's inside the mesa and angle the boreholes to come out on top of the mesa so they can later encase the boreholes with a concrete gel for the purpose of stability and to create a conduit of sorts that they can then send instruments down to take measurements and readings of the anomaly from inside the mesa to best determine how to get at it. So, Roger, we're still hearing from people that clearly have not been paying attention to the past episodes that are always saying, well, why can't they just take some dynamite to that sumbitch and blow it open? Right? Well, folks, there's very good reasons why. Number one, the ranch does not own all of that mesa. The bulk of that mesa, correct me if I'm wrong, Roger, is owned by the local Ute tribal council, and I think there's part of the mesa is also owned by another private individual. So,
Yeah,
just
it's the UFO campground that they have out there. They own some of that property on top of the mesa there, where you can bring up tents, RVs, and things like that that they have. So there is a private owner there. So yeah, you can't just go in and just do whatever you want to the mesa because it is surrounded by multiple entities that own that property, and it all conjoins right there within that area. So you're not going to be able to do certain things without affecting other people's livelihoods or even just damaging what nature has out there and the beauty.
Yeah.
And you don't want to, I mean, we've already seen there on the Mesa, right? There are petroglyphs and things like that. So, if you go in with this gung-ho attitude of like, yeah, just dynamite the sucker and blow it open, right? You're losing so much history there and potentially things that may not have even been discovered that from an archaeological perspective should be protected and recorded and preserved. So yeah, I get it. I'm with other people. I would love to, just be able to have some equipment, dig up some rocks, go down in there and be like, yeah, that's what it is. But that's just not how reality works, folks. So
Yeah, and there's also the very real possibility that by dynamiting and doing blasting, you could, you know, damage whatever that anomaly is that's inside the mesa, and you end up destroying or damaging the very thing that you're trying to you know, get access
yeah,
to. So while it's nice to joke about, and I get people being frustrated about the fact that they have to do drilling and try all these non-invasive things, but again, folks, it's part of that scientific process. There has to be a process before you can even entertain the idea of something uh, far more damaging that has a far more permanent effect. And let's also consider that we know that the mesa is already unstable as it is. So you run the risk of turning those boulders and rocks that are up there into projectiles by doing blasting. And again, it just the thought of doing blasting would cause way more problems than it's worth, especially if in doing so you run the risk of damaging or destroying what you're after in the first place. So
right.
just had to
100%
get that
agree.
off my chest, folks. So the drilling of the new borehole by Mark Construction then begins. And the scene then cuts away to the triangle where Travis, Eric, Thomas, Caleb, and Dragon meet up to discuss what the next experiment to be conducted will be. Dragon is in the process of assembling a rocket and asks Eric what the plan is going to be for that night's experiment. Eric tells Dragon that they intend to use the rocket as expendable resources that they can fire into the laser's path where the gap anomaly occurred just a few days prior when New Salt Laser had 7 space cannons running during a nighttime experiment in the hopes of triggering that same kind of anomaly again. And in regards to that black void that appeared on several of the still photos taken 2 days prior during the space cannon experiment, Travis says, quote, "Is there a surface there? Is there a force there? What is it? If we can categorize what that is, then that should tell us something," close quote. Dragon then points out a very bright UAP in the sky. And this is daytime, folks, that Dragon sees this UAP up in the sky. Travis says that the UAP that Dragon pointed out looks very much like the one they saw just a few nights ago during the space cannon experiment. He says it definitely did not appear to be an airplane. So then the guys from New Salt Laser, our good buddy Pete Kelsey, and then Jim Royston and Sam DeRiso of Omnitech arrive at the Triangle to join them. Eric explains to Sean Anderson of New Salt Laser that they want to try to replicate the last experiment, but with just one space cannon this time instead of 7. Travis proceeds to tell Sean about the mysterious black void appearing in the still photos that were shot during the experiment, to which Sean displays complete surprise. He's like, wow, first time I've ever heard of that. So Eric then tells the New Salt Laser team and Pete that they're going to collect data like they did last time, and that he'll have all of the ranch's assets trained on the Triangle location where the experiment will be conducted. Travis tells us that they're repeating the same experiment as last time, with just the one space cannon and without that white wall kind of type thing that was up on the lift that
Yeah,
Thomas
the
was
screen.
taking. Yeah, the screen. Um, and they'll be launching rockets into the laser's pathway at about the 100-foot mark to see what they might hit, if anything. So the teams then began assembling the equipment to run the experiment, and Travis tells us that they're going to scan the entire area with 3 different kinds of LiDAR. Jim will operate an aerial-based drone LiDAR device. Pete Kelsey will operate a terrestrial or ground-based laser scanner on a tripod in the middle of the triangle. And then Caleb will operate a handheld SLAM scanner as he walks back and forth through the triangle area. Now, all 3 of these devices use infrared light that can image things on the surface of the ground and in the air that the naked eye might not be able to see. So these are really, really useful tools for the team to be using. Once darkness falls, Fire Management Officer Don Mitchell joins the team at the triangle before the experiment is about to start, and presumably, I would guess, Roger, to help monitor for any potential fire hazards with sparks flying off from the rockets and stuff like that.
Oh
And
yeah.
we've seen Don Mitchell several times on the show. He was the official that came out to inspect the fence post, and so he works for the Ute tribal fire management office. So really cool guy. So Eric then tells the team that he should probably get back to the command center to make sure everything's trained on the triangle area. And I don't know about you, Roger, but that was kind of like Eric was kind of like saying, "Yeah, you guys go ahead and blow shit up. While I go someplace safe." Right? I mean, that was just kind of how that moment came across to me. But then, of course, they go ahead. Travis gives Sean Anderson the green light to fire up the space cannon. Now, presumably, Roger, within seconds of the laser shooting skyward, Travis says, quote, "We're hitting something with the laser," close quote. And Roger, this is where the first, OMG/WTF moment happens in this episode. So instead of the beam from the laser space cannon continuing unabated into the night sky, it appears to be hitting some kind of solid mass as the beam just simply cuts off. And Thomas wonders aloud if perhaps it's hitting a cloud, but then mentions that he can see stars in the sky around, indicating that there's no cloud cover. So it's clearly not reflecting off the surface of a cloud there on the ranch. Sean Anderson of New Salt Laser then says, quote, "It shouldn't stop that low," close quote. Now, what he means by that is that laser, again, should be shooting straight up into the sky unabated, as we've seen all the other times that they brought those laser space cannons onto the ranch. Well, Travis then says, quote, "Just after we turned on the laser space cannon, the beam was cut off by an invisible obstruction. But rather than 100 feet high, like it was 2 nights ago, this was at a much higher altitude. So is this something new, or is it something that moves from one spot to another?" Close quote. Travis then tells Eric about what they're seeing via radio. So Eric then takes a closer look from his point at the command center via the camera assets that are trained on the triangle in the hopes of verifying what Travis and the team are seeing real time in the triangle. And Thomas is looking at the point where the beam cuts off with a camera, and the camera that Thomas is using just goes dark on him. It just up and shuts off on him every time he tries to film where that point in the sky is that the beam just cuts off. Eric then tells the team that he is detecting a 1.6 gigahertz signal, with the source of that signal appearing to be about 10 to 15 degrees south of west of the triangle out near Homestead 2, and the signal is there right now. Travis tells Eric he's going to point some of their antennas at the triangle over towards Homestead 2. So, Roger, we're going to pause right there for a minute and talk about this first major moment of many in this episode, where when they turn on that laser space cannon, that beam just stops. It outright stops. And so what I want you to do, Roger, is think back to that episode from season 3 of the docu series when Caleb shines that green targeting laser up into the sky, and that's the first time where we see a laser with behavior that seems to hit an object or some kind of mass, some kind of obstruction in the sky that
It's
cuts the
invisible
beam
too.
off and then ends up, as we know in that episode from season 3, the beam bends at an angle and then splits in two. So, Roger, what's going through your mind as you are catching your first glimpse of this massively powerful laser space cannon that is designed to just go unabated up into the atmosphere, and that it's visible from space, from what we're told, and it is clearly, I think they said at an altitude of roughly 2,000 feet, so not quite a mile up into the air. That beam just stops, like it's hitting something, like something is just, like like God or somebody were just holding his hand over it and keeping it from going any further. What was going through your mind when that moment happened?
So really, that was the first WTF moment that I had, and it did remind me of Caleb's, when he was shining that green laser light up there, and it did hit against something. And again, it it reminded me, like when he was moving that laser light, that they because that was like a handheld thing, right? And
Right.
so it was easy to move that laser light around, and he could move it off to the left, and it would continue on up, and he'd move it back, and then it would stop. It would get hit, right? And then as they looked at it closer, it was splitting the beam. And I've honestly thought, and again, one of my theories all along that I've thought, and I think they have a lot of evidence that points to this, but there is something in the airspace, and whether it's cloaked um, with some type of technology that allows us not to be able to see it, but exists in our physical space, or is something that exists in a dimension or space where we cannot see it, but there is something there. And, I think that the ranch, again, like we talked about this in episodes ago, where I think the knowledge given to the team out there based on their focus and what, because the ranch detects intent for all intents and purposes, no pun intended. But I think that started basically saying like whatever is there, that intelligence, whatever is surrounds Skinwalker Ranch is starting to say, I'm going to show you a little bit more. I'm going to give you a little bit more knowledge. And again, it was at that moment that I thought, not only is something there that we cannot see, but it is physically blocking one of the most powerful lasers that can be shot into space. Um, it was discussed in Jeff Freeman's episode on his YouTube channel that I mean they had like water coolers that go and run to help keep these lasers cooled down, right? Because they're so powerful. Like there is extreme danger. You don't want to get hit by that laser. So for something in a clear night sky to stop that laser and kind of put that X on the top, that's significant. Like I have no explanation of what could stop something there in a perfectly clear night, right? And you can't see it. Like it was that first moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? I mean, I still don't know how to explain that. There, if I look at something, right, I should pass my hand through it, right? And if something's going to be blocking something, you're going to see what's blocking that. And yet, that's not what was shown. It's just, to me, it was, yeah, it was kind of the beginning of the end because I had like everything that just rolled downhill from there was just more extraordinary on top of that.
It really was. And folks, just let's just pause for a moment and realize the conversation that we're having. We're having a conversation about some kind of object, some kind of mass that is up in the sky above the triangle on Skinwalker Ranch that, for all intents and purposes, is cloaked. Now, that's something straight out of the pages of science fiction, folks. That's something that we see in Star Trek all the time. This is not something that we have really entertained as being a real thing in this quote unquote real world. And why are we having this conversation? Because the data is pointing us in that direction. Now, is it conclusively that that's what we're dealing with? No, we can't say that. But that's the conversation that we're having. It is up for consideration. And I don't know about you, Roger, but when this docu-series began, would I have envisioned us talking about cloaked craft, spacecraft, or interdimensional craft, or some
No.
ultra top secret US government, or heaven forbid, some foreign adversary that has unlocked the technology to have something hidden completely 100% invisible to the human eyes, but that can only be seen on other sensor platforms like infrared that exist in a different part of the light spectrum,
And
which is
and
why they can be viewed on infrared, right?
right. And even then, not to get, you know, like even viewing the infrared and that spectrum, it's not like all of a sudden something just like there's this massive building in the sky. Where did that come from? Right? You still don't get a full picture. And so I think the way we view physics and the science that we have, I think a lot of people are going to have to go back and really start rethinking how physics works in our real world because it's apparent. It's not like this is season one, episode one, and we're like, oh, okay, well, all right, that was interesting, right? But where's your data to back it up? You've got so much more data that has been collected over these past seasons that it's just another notch there. And, I again, I honestly wish I could scientifically state, like, hey, here's a hypothesis, and this is what I think, but I I don't have a degree to do that. And my mind just is still trying to understand what could actually be there, occupy a physical space, not be seen, and still like even like the human eye can see through it. You can see star. I mean, like the manipulation of what would take the energy, the power to have something there that apparently is either so big that we detected at several levels, or this thing moves, right? And how does that even work? I don't know, but it is amazing nonetheless.
Exactly. The fact that we're even having this conversation, and again, to all you naysayers, we're not saying conclusively that that's what we're dealing with. We aren't conclusively saying, "Oh, this is undeniably a cloaked starship." We don't know. We don't know what that object is. We don't know what is causing this phenomenon, except that the data indicates that there is something that has mass that is detectable on certain sensor platforms, but yet it's invisible to the human eye. It's
Yeah.
invisible. That it just simply is not there. So then that begs the question: how much are we missing in the skies, not just above Skinwalker Ranch, but conceivably all around the world? If there is a civilization or an organization, a government, whatever you want to call it, that has the technology to do something like this, it could literally be all around us and we would be none the wiser because there's no sound and it leaves, there's no trace of it appearing. You just can't see it. It's invisible, and I can't believe that we're actually having this conversation. But yet, time after time, Roger, this is what the data shows us, that there appears to be something cloaked, something that is invisible, whether that's a craft of some kind or who knows. We don't know what it is that is there, but it has mass. It's detectable, and they've seen evidence of it there multiple times. So again, the data is being gathered that is pointing us in that direction. And
Well,
how incredible is that?
it's very incredible because I think, you know, it makes me think about the experiments that they've ran in the past. So number one, in the triangle area, right up where this anomaly is at, Jeremiah Pate and his team at Lunason sent up that balloon, right? Well, that balloon went up. It didn't hit any obstruction. There was nothing there, right? But it did notate a time dilation. They lost like a quarter of a second of time,
Which is
which,
huge.
man, we could spend a whole nother episode on that. Because that's
That's
just not
significant.
possible.
Yeah.
But how many times has Cameron Fugel flown through the triangle? Multiple times, you know? And I would dare say aircraft and things that pass over in that general vicinity, pass through there. But I mean, specifically Cameron, they've had some close calls. They've caught UAPs and things like that. But it's not like the physical meta nature of Cameron's helicopter. It passes through with what's ever there, right? So is this something, again, I don't know what it is, but is this something that you can pass through it and it can quote shapeshift at will so things can go through it, or is it there all the time? Does it come and go? I mean, these are questions that I simply don't have answers for, and I don't think we're going to have answers for some time because it operates on principles that we just don't
We
know.
don't understand. Yeah.
We don't understand, like, yeah, and how it's able to do that. Because yeah, people, I mean, and that's why I think that they send up rockets and things like that. Because, you know, it's and I'm sure we'll get to this, but it's interesting how the rockets that they did shoot up again, like something pushed them away so they didn't go up where that was. So I don't know. It's strange, but yeah, let's get on to even more crazy stuff.
Absolutely, folks. We're just barely going down this rabbit hole here. So Eric then tells about a new antenna array on the ranch that they refer to as the Kraken, right? Which is different from
Kraken.
their cue the Clash of the Titans quotes now. So yeah, the basically this new antenna platform that Eric has dubbed the Kraken is different from their RF spectrum analyzer equipment. And the RF spectrum analyzer allows them, of course, to see which frequencies are present and at what amplitude. Whereas this new Kraken device is a system that has 5 antennas that are capable of not only detecting RF signals, but of identifying the direction from which those signals are coming from. And that's pretty significant. The Kraken system is telling them that they have a source of 1.6 gigahertz, in fact, coming from Homestead 2. Travis then aims one of his RF antennas at Homestead 2 and begins hearing a signal. He confirms with Eric that the signal is indeed originating from behind Homestead 2 and that it has definite sound to it, like it's a communications signal of some kind. Travis then mentions the pattern of how the 1.6 gigahertz signal precipitates, or rather preempts, strange phenomena and activity at the ranch, on a relatively frequent basis, as we have seen in episodes prior to this one this season and in many times in previous seasons. Eric, and this is when the next rabbit hole begins, folks. Eric then sees a UAP on his monitor while he's in the command center, descending very slowly from the sky towards the mesa. He radios Travis to tell him of a bright light to the north of the mesa descending from the sky, and he asks Travis for visual confirmation. Travis and the team then look upwards at the mesa towards the north, and they cannot see anything in the sky resembling what Eric is describing to them. Eric says the descending light is not behaving like an aircraft, a satellite, or a meteor, and wonders if it could be a UAP. Nobody on the ground at the triangle is able to see what Eric is describing to them. Thomas then asks if it's possible that the mesa is obstructing their view of it from where their current vantage point is in the triangle. Travis says that it's possible, and Thomas then suggests that somebody should run up to the top of the mesa to see if it makes any difference in their ability to see this object that Eric is describing to them. Travis says, do it, and Thomas, of course, readily obliges. Thomas takes Dragon's camera and hikes his way up the face of the mesa as quickly and as best he can, in the dark, no less.
Pretty amazing.
I'd be afraid of doing that in broad daylight. And of course, at nighttime, I'm sure you're going to have a much higher likelihood of encountering things like rattlesnakes up there. So that's guts that Thomas has there.
So, oh, yeah, for sure.
So when Thomas reaches the top of the mesa, he sees nothing at all out of the ordinary. No UAP, nothing. Travis radios Eric to tell him as much and suggests to Eric that it might be showing up on Eric's cameras in the infrared spectrum. Travis then tells Caleb to get the SLAM scanner going and tells Pete to get the terrestrial LiDAR going. And he tells the team to get anything infrared that they have at their disposal to get it operational right away. So Jim Royston from Omnitech launches his drone, and at that point, all infrared assets are now in play there in the triangle. Thomas radios Eric to ask him if he still sees the UAP descending. Eric tells him that it is no longer appearing on his monitors. It has disappeared from view completely. Dragon then says that he prepped a rocket with a chute in it, and he suggests launching that rocket up into where the laser appears to hit something in the sky. Travis, of course, says, man, no, we've launched way too many rockets and people are getting sick of us launching rockets. So screw that. We're not launching any more rockets, right?
Wrong.
No. Travis, of course, readily concurs, and they launch the rocket. They launch it straight up. It's aiming straight up. And to me, Roger, it looked like at roughly 20 to 30 feet up from when the rocket launched, the rocket veers wide left of the beam, like something is forcing it away or pushing it away from the laser beam. It does not fly into the beam or to the point where the beam appears to be cut off in the sky, which is what they wanted it to do. So Don Mitchell, looking skyward, then tells Travis that he sees two bulbs on the end of the laser. Travis looks skyward and says, quote, that's right, there sure is. The laser split in two, close quote. Sean Anderson of New Salt Laser then says he's never seen one of his lasers do this before. Pretty well worth noting if Sean Anderson is saying he's never seen this happen before.
Right.
So Travis asks Bryant and Thomas to confirm whether or not they're seeing the same bulbs and split of the laser. Both of them confirm that they see it as well. So Dragon radios Eric in the command center to tell him what they're seeing, and Eric says he's going to get some cameras on that to confirm it from his vantage point in the command center. Eric then says, quote, I gotta say, this looks really interesting. I don't know that I've seen this before. There is a significant increase in the beam diameter at a very well-defined altitude. Close quote. Thomas then says, it's like a stopping point. To which Travis says, from here, it looks like a dead stop, like it's making an X, right?
Yep.
And Christopher from New Salt Laser then tells the team, you really don't see that unless the beam is hitting something that has mass. There you go, Roger.
Yep.
Dragon then asks, are we actually hitting the anomaly with the laser? Great question. Travis then says he wants to launch another rocket. The rocket launches, and once again, big surprise, it gets diverted away from the anomaly in the sky. So Travis says, quote, I've designed and built and flown thousands of rockets. They're supposed to go straight up. Now, these kinds of malfunctions shouldn't be happening. So all I could speculate on was whatever was splitting the laser beam might have been connected to these errors. But how? Close quote. They run out of rockets and decide to conclude the experiment. The team are all just completely flabbergasted and astonished by what they saw. And Thomas says, from my perspective, I'd say the ranch definitely reacted.
Yep.
I would say so, Thomas. Sean from New Salt Laser once again says he's never seen anything like this. And Dragon, with perhaps one of the better quotes of the night, says, it's been a night, right? So, Roger, that concludes their laser experiment that yielded results that were just extraordinary. That's the only way that I can put them. Final thoughts on the laser experiment.
Yeah, it's I mean, all I can describe it, same as you, extraordinary. And it just begs more questions than it gives answers for that. Because yeah, I mean, with how high powered those lasers are and what they captured, that just shouldn't be possible. And yet we saw it. So
Exactly. So from there, they decide to the scene then cuts away to um, the drilling team. The next day, they return to Alex and Jordan once again drilling into the side of the mesa. Now, the drilling team were able to get over 100 feet inside the mesa, and the Skinwalker Ranch team are all gathered out there at the base of the mesa to observe this next phase of the drilling. And it looks to me like it's actually raining at the time out there that this is happening, which in that part of Utah is a pretty rare thing. So, but
yep.
all of a sudden the drill hits something hard. There's like a an audible sound of the drill
Yeah.
hitting something hard, and the drill seizes up and stops drilling. Jordan then tells Alex that he's pretty sure the drill or one of the rods or pipes just broke off. Now, Alex tells the team that they don't know where the drill or the pipe broke. And Travis asks how it happened, and Alex says they hit something really hard and the drill bit couldn't penetrate whatever it was that they hit. As soon as they increased the pressure to try to drill through whatever it was that they hit, the pipe or the rod snapped. So Travis then wonders if the drill has hit part of that debris field, and perhaps that is what caused the drill pipe or the drill rod to break. So they shut the drilling rig down, and Caleb asks them how far into the mesa they've gotten. And Alex tells them that they've gotten into about 130 feet. So Alex confirms that they're roughly halfway up into the mesa. He then tells Travis and the team that they're going to have to begin pulling the rods or the pipes out of the borehole to determine where the break happened. And he tells them that this is going to be a very time consuming process and will be a while before drilling can resume again. So, again, Roger, we have something that we see on almost a constant basis where equipment, regardless of the nature of that equipment, whether it's digital equipment or a drill, like what we've seen happen with Sure Shot and with now with Mark Construction, where equipment just it fails, it stops working, and sometimes
Yeah.
they're able to get it reworking again. We see batteries being drained all the time, so this is kind of par for the course, is it not?
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think, as frustrating as it is for us as viewers to not be able to drill in to the Mesa, I can only imagine the frustration that not only do the drilling companies that they bring out, right? Because they typically don't run into these types of obstacles. But for the team out there, trying to get in there, they've been thwarted over and over again. And there are things, whether it's a malfunction or things break, it just does not go according to plan and it lengthens it. So, yeah, I mean, I could really see kind of the irritation with Thomas when that happened. Not at the people or the construction company or the drilling employees there, but just that they've tackled the mesa in so many different ways just to try to drill in and get some basic readings. And at every point they're stopped. Something happens. And it definitely feels like whatever's there is something stopping them from finding out what they want to know or from getting more data. Um, so yeah, definitely frustrating that they have to do that kind of stuff. And we're gonna have to wait and see what happens with the Mesa. But I'm confident with the team's ability there, they'll continue to come up with ways to get inside that Mesa and figure out what's going on.
I agree. So later that afternoon, the team meets up with Jim Royston and Pete Kelsey in the command center to go over the LiDAR results from the scans taken during the laser experiment the night before. Eric begins showing them the footage of the UAP that appeared during the experiment above the mesa, which none of the team at the triangle were able to see with their own eyes. The light just simply emerges out of nowhere and it's extremely bright. So Travis says, quote, it's crazy because it's not a comet or a meteor based off the way it moves. There is no way you telling us it's there in the sky for that long that we wouldn't have seen something that bright, close quote. Eric then responds to Travis, so that lends support to your idea that it may have been only visible in the infrared. Eric further
Right.
goes on to say, quote, we're talking about an object or some kind of an effect that we can't see with the naked eye. Therefore, we might be dealing with things in our airspace over the ranch that would normally go undetected. Are we engaging with something potentially exotic or off world or whatever at Skinwalker Ranch? Close quote. That's pretty big question there for Eric to vocalize.
Yeah.
Eric then asks Pete what his data shows. And Roger, if you notice the same thing that I did, Pete responds by saying, quote, well, I'll just show you. And the look on Pete's face demonstrates his level, I think, of absolute astonishment, just as what you and I experienced in watching what is about to come to light. No pun intended. Did you notice that Pete kind of had that, you know, that look on his face of like, what the hell am I? How am I going to ever explain this? Did you kind of get that that
Yeah.
impression off of the look on Pete's face with that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, he looked like it was that expression of like you guys just from what I've seen, I can't explain it. I'm just going to show you because words will not be able to explain it alone. So,
and that's a perfect way of saying it, Roger. We always hear that classic saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and So it is with this, because I'm still having trouble trying to articulate what I saw in watching this episode and how I feel about what I saw. But Pete goes on and mentions that Caleb did 9 scans with the SLAM scanner. He then shows an image that tracked Caleb's pathway of walking as he was conducting this SLAM scan there in the triangle. The data from Caleb's scans, however, shows as being underground and not on the surface or in the air. Pete says that shouldn't be there. That's physically impossible. That's
Right.
impossible. LiDAR can't see through the ground, is what Pete was saying. He goes on to say, this data is 200 feet underground. And he reemphasizes LiDAR can't see through the ground. Eric says, this is impossible. So, Roger, there is the beginning of the next big WTF moment. And it just kind of unfolds from here to where Travis says infrared LiDAR can visualize things in the air as well as on top of the ground that the naked eye can't see. So, how in the heck did Pete's SLAM scanner detect a massive amount of data points 200 feet underground at the triangle? Close quote. Pete then isolates the LiDAR data from the 200 feet underground from Caleb's SLAM scan and shows another 3D perspective of the gathered data points. And Roger, it shows a perfectly formed ring when he does that 3D rendering of it. And Pete says, quote, I wonder if Jim, and he's speaking of Jim Royston, not Jim Kelgard, he says, I wonder if Jim is thinking what I'm thinking because a year ago, you, Jim Royston, found some donut like ring of data that you couldn't explain. To which Jim says, absolutely. Travis then recounts the whole incident when Omnitech discovered the presence of a circular red ring at the triangle with a void in the center of it. Remember, deep, dark, black void. And Jim discovered another perfect ring with a void in the center of it, located once again at the triangle. And at that time, Travis remarked that it looked like modeling for a Lorentzian traversable wormhole, but it looked much more three-dimensional than the donut-like anomaly seen last year. And if you remember, Roger, that I believe was from episode 1 of this season, where Jim Royston saw that
The
that
donut shaped ring. Yeah.
donut-shaped ring. So Travis says, quote, I think we found a third LiDAR scan that gave us a similar result there at the triangle, close quote. Caleb then says, think about that now. We've got one showing us underground, one showing us at ground level, and one in the air above the triangle. Right? So there's
Right. Yeah.
three different instances, folks. Travis responds by saying, quote, it's like we've taken cross sections now of a conical anomaly that's going down into the ground, to which everybody in the room nods their head and concurs. Travis, or Pete rather, then shows us a 3D rendering of what scientists, the show's producers then show us a 3D rendering of what scientists think a traversable wormhole would look like if such a thing were proven to exist and occur. Travis then says, if you combine the three data sets that we've collected above and below the triangle, it looks very similar to the structure of a traversable wormhole, according to these theories. What's also compelling about this is that the triangle is right where we've detected energy spikes, seen things blocking and causing voids and lasers, and even recorded video of UAPs literally disappearing in midair. It's still hard to believe, but at this point, I don't know what else to think, close quote. Now, Roger, you'd think this is where the amazement and dropping of the jaws to the floor would be the end for this episode. But oh
You
no, not
no,
so
no, no.
fast.
It gets even more crazy.
It sure does. Pete then says, quote, well, I still have the terrestrial laser scanning data to show you, close quote. Pete then shows us an image taken from ground level at the triangle that seems to look like a transparent cone around the space cannon and the area where they were all standing there at the triangle or slightly off by it there. And Pete says, quote, this is one of the terrestrial laser scans we did from our perspective at the triangle. The terrestrial laser scanner can see farther and gather more points per second than the SLAM scanner can. We're looking at an anomaly out in the east fields. So this conical type anomaly is actually out in the east field. Travis then says, what the crap? That's insane. Like, we've never heard Travis utter that phrase before, but it's definitely appropriate, right? So Thomas then asks,
Exactly.
yeah, Thomas then asks what would account for the sharp lines coming down in the image data. And Pete responds by saying, I don't know what it is, but there had to be something there for the LiDAR to detect it. Travis then says, whatever is there is as if it's invisible. And Pete just simply nods his head in agreement. So Pete then zooms the image out at Travis's request, and sure enough, it looks like a discernible column or cone stretching from the sky to the ground. And Pete says, quote, here is where things get even more interesting. There is a similar anomaly right at Homestead 2, close quote. Thomas then says, I see swirl marks. Boom, right? Travis then says, look at this smear all around us. We're inside a cone of something. He then asks Pete if the image
Yep.
can look up, and Pete obliges. And again, folks, boom, there it is. And Travis says, it's a cone. That is insane. It's all around us. We're all inside it. And Pete says, this is a massive cone. We were right in the middle of it at the triangle. So you're inside it, Travis remarks. We're all inside it. And Pete says, it goes all the way from Homestead 2 to the East Field. And of course, the triangle is like right dead center in the middle of those 2 points. Travis says, I wonder how high the apex of this cone is. And Pete says, more or less, it's about 2,000 feet. Dragon then remarks with one of the other better quotes of the evening. He says that it looks to be about the same height as the space laser went the previous night. And he says, who'd have thought that a laser beam being stopped in midair would not be the strangest thing that we see? Absolute, on point, 100% correct. Dragon just
Yep.
nailed that. So Travis then says, quote, the data that was captured last night at the triangle is absolutely unbelievable. We were looking at what appeared to be a massive cone-shaped anomaly that was supported by 2 pillars, one coming from Homestead 2, where we detected a 1.6 gigahertz frequency signal, and the other from the Eastfield Canyon, where in the past we've seen all kinds of UAP and energy phenomena occur. And what was really incredible is that the point of this cone was sitting right above the center of the triangle at 2,000 feet, which was the exact altitude where the path of our laser beam was being terminated during the experiment, close quote. Travis then goes on to say, this is incredible. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. If this turns out to be real measurements of some real phenomena, then we've measured something nobody's ever seen before, period, ever. Think about what that would mean, right? So Eric
Yeah,
responds.
it's insane.
Eric responds to that statement by Travis by saying, "Yeah, that if is a really big if. Will look led by the data." Or he says, "Well, look led by the data. That's the data." And he says, as he's pointing to this clearly apparent cone that is there, that is again completely invisible to the naked eye, folks, but yet it shows up on LiDAR. LiDAR would not show that if there was nothing there to show. So there is definitely some kind of energy, some kind of force, whatever you want to call it, that is present there. And Travis wraps up the episode by saying, quote, "We've heard legends of structures or spacecraft buried in the mesa, and even crazy stories about portals actually existing here on the ranch. All we can do is objectively analyze the data that we collect out here. And at this point, the data seems to be supporting these stories. Now, where will it all lead? I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing, I'm determined to find out." Close quote. So, Roger, that is what happened in this episode called the Cone Zone. And we've seen the absolute astonishment and disbelief on the faces of everyone involved in that experiment, including Dr. Taylor and Eric
Oh,
Bard. And even they are now saying, and this is me paraphrasing here, but they're basically saying, we can't believe that we're actually saying this, but the data is leading to some of these truly extraordinary possibilities of what may be occurring out here at Skinwalker Ranch. And again, Roger, I'm having difficulty articulating how this makes me feel because I've always felt, and I'll even go so far as to say I've always known that there's something really unique and really odd about Skinwalker Ranch, something that just inherently draws me in and fascinates me because of the possibilities and ramifications of what it could mean if any of these extraordinary things, such as the things that we just saw evidence of in this particular episode, end up being confirmed and proven to be factual and real. Um, I don't know. I don't. I can't. I truly can't express how I feel, other than to say jaw floor. I mean,
right.
it's truly left me not knowing what to make of it, and in a good way. I don't mean to imply that it scares me in any way, shape, or form. It excites me to no end. It's exhilarating to see this kind of thing unfolding, and what we're seeing here, Roger. And tell me if you feel differently about this. What we are seeing here, all these people that have been bitching and complaining about the pace of the program. Oh, look, they're launching another rocket. Yippee. Oh, why don't they just blast the mesa? We're getting tired of waiting. It's so slow. They're just trying to drag it all out and milk it for all it's worth. No. If you're honestly one of the people that are still clinging to that, go take some medication because you can't focus your attention because that's how, and I don't mean to sound, that's a mean thing of me to say, and I realize that, and I apologize for that. But seriously, folks, do you not understand that what we saw in this episode is the culmination of what we're leading up to with this scientific method process playing out? It takes time. It's the long game. It's not something that resolves itself in the space of a 42-minute television episode. We're now in the fifth season and it's still not resolved yet. And it may never be resolved at least as long as there's a docu-series. This is not something that you can just simply, you know, go and figure out in a matter of, a few days or even a few years. it takes time. It takes patience. And for people that don't have patience, there's nothing I can say or do that's going to make you change your mind. And I get that. But understand that there's a lot of folks like myself that realize that this is a process. It is a slow process. It is deliberately slow because you want to be accurate with the data that you gather. And it just frustrates me to no end when people say that it's not moving fast enough. Because if Roger, if you watch this episode and your complaint is, well, it's not happening fast enough, uh,
I
okay, have fun storming the castle, pal. Um, I I don't get it, and I realize there's always going to be people that are going to feel that they're getting shortchanged. They're going to feel that they're not getting out of it what they feel they should be getting out of the viewing experience, at least. Um, and there's nothing that we can do to sway those people.
no,
But
but I mean, could you imagine though? I mean, I'll say this: Brandon is a very smart, savvy guy. Um, Obviously, he's made a lot of money in real estate. He could have, just like Bob Bigelow, purchased the ranch and locked that place, locked it up tight, right? Security guards, we wouldn't have any. He could have kept this thing 100% private, making all these discoveries and kept it to himself because that's his right. He owns the property, right?
well
He
said.
made a conscious decision and a brave decision to come out and put his reputation on the line, especially from a professional standpoint and what he was doing, and says, I am going to share this experience and journey with you through a docuseries, right? We're going to go where the science takes us. And the team that he assembled, people with different backgrounds, different lifestyles, all mixed together for one purpose, and that's uncovering what is happening at Skinwalker Ranch. He could have kept that all to himself, just like Bob Bigelow has kept everything to himself and has only shared just a fraction, a small portion of what he and his team discovered and all the times that they've done there. So personally, if you don't like the direction of the show, if it's too slow, science isn't your thing, don't watch it,
Simple
right?
as that. Yeah.
I invite anybody to have constructive criticism, which is great because constructive criticism allows everybody with a view to say, this is how I think it could be better or whatnot. But to just completely come out and say, oh, this is crap, this is going too slow, you blow up the mesa, like you should, unless you are an authority in demolition, you have a PhD in astrophysics, things like that, where you can make an informed opinion. I mean, I don't have any of those credentials. All I know is that I am greatly appreciative of what Brandon and his team has shared. It's more than anything we're getting from our government,
That's for
right?
damn sure.
If you watch the gimbal video or the Tic Tacs and are like super excited, being like, oh man, that's, but complaining about what's going on Skinwalker Ranch, are you living in the same world? Because where has that disclosure gone from 2017 to now? Yes, more things, more people are coming, but it is going at a snail's pace, right? And if you're still excited, like, oh man, we're getting more and more, but then you're blasting Brandon Fugal and the History Channel because you're not getting a neatly wrapped up fun episode that has a bow tied at the end and says everything solved, like Law and Order. That's just not the way it works. So you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? So if you love digging into the unknown and the unexplained, enjoy the ride. And if you really want to talk to the team, yeah, become an insider, ask questions, listen to the things that they talk about that there's just no time to put in a 47-minute episode, right? I can't tell you how many times people are like, well, why didn't they do this or why didn't they do that? There's nobody said that they didn't, right? You can only put so much in each episode
Right.
and each season. And
Oh,
again,
case in point, on Jeff Freeman's podcast tonight, he showed a still photo where when Dragon was preparing those rockets, there was a good 5 or 6 rockets on the table, but yet in the episode we only saw 2 get launched. So presumably they launched more rockets than just the 2, and who knows? Maybe we'll find out the details on that specific point tomorrow when the team does a Q&A with the insiders. And another reason to join the insider program, folks, one of the many great things, not only is the insider community the greatest online community I've ever been a part of, but you get access to things like the Q&A with the team members at Skinwalker Ranch that give you all the behind the scenes details of the episodes that have already aired to give you greater context for some of the things that maybe weren't demonstrated as effectively as they would have liked them to have been. A lot of questions that people have have been answered as a result of these online Q&As that the Skinwalker Ranch team does with Skinwalker Ranch insiders. And another great way, if you really want to know what's going on and, become an insider, find out. There's You can join for a monthly subscription, cancel anytime, $10 a month, or you can sign up for a yearly subscription for like I think it's $100, and you get a free T-shirt on top of that. So it's truly being a Skinwalker Ranch insider is one of the best investments I have ever made, and I mean that most sincerely. So skinwalker-ranch.com to find out more about that. But to your point, Roger, absolutely. This is a this is something that you want to just kick back and enjoy the ride. We are all spectators, and we owe Brandon Fugal a humongous debt of gratitude for taking that risk and allowing a docu-series to be filmed about Skinwalker Ranch. Unprecedented until this docu-series came about. Until that time, Skinwalker Ranch was, locked up almost as tightly security wise as, Area 51, perhaps. Um, and now, because of this amazing docu-series on the History Channel, the world knows about Skinwalker Ranch. And I think that is fantastic. And Roger, Brandon Fugal, and I've referred to this a number of times, but an interview that Brandon Fugal did recently with Ross Coulthart, Brandon said, in regards to disclosure, referring to the UAP UFO phenomenon, disclosure is going to likely come much more quickly from the private sector and a private enterprise like Skinwalker Ranch than we're ever going to see from an act of legislation or coming through the channels of government. You know,
right?
we're not going to get that storybook moment of where the president's going to address the nation and say, "Well, folks, we're the long-standing questions now been answered, and we're not alone in the universe." I mean, I don't think that's ever going to happen. You're likely going to start seeing little bits of information coming out again from enterprises like Skinwalker Ranch and perhaps even Mount Wilson Ranch and some of the other extraordinary sites that exhibit strange phenomena that are similar to Skinwalker Ranch. I believe that as Brandon says, that's where the information is going to flow much more freely, and it's going to be much more transparent than anything that the government has their hand in, because
Right.
that's just the way the government is, folks. It doesn't matter whether you're Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, progressive, does not matter. Government is designed to work exceedingly tediously slow, excruciatingly so. Talk about the scientific process being slow and tedious. It's got nothing on the United States Congress, right? So that's just how it is, folks. And one more point that I want to belabor. here, Roger, before we wrap up. And Jeff Freeman touched upon this during his podcast tonight, is the people that well, for want of a better word, they're trolls that just simply want to say, "Oh, this is all nonsense and it's all made up. It's all fake. These guys are all faking stuff, and there's nothing real about this." It's just like those ghost adventure shows out there that are just simply, there's a sucker born every minute. You're all falling for it, kind of type thing. I get where those people are coming from. I really do, because when it comes to a lot of those other shows out there, I happen to hold that opinion. And I think that is, in fact, actually happening with a lot of those paranormal shows that are out there. I mean,
Right.
like I've talked about that one that was on Discovery that, Vampires in America. There's actually, unfortunately, some people out there that think that kind of stuff is real. And
It's called corporate America.
exactly. So that is not categorically not happening here regarding the secret of Skinwalker Ranch. It is an unscripted show. There is no writers that say, "Hey, why don't we throw this into the show?" There's none of that going on. They just have live cameras out there during a several month spread during the year where a film crew is out on the ranch. Travis Taylor's out there, and they are just conducting experiments that are very relevant to the investigation going on at Skinwalker Ranch. There's nothing fake about it. Look at the credentials of the people that are coming in as subject matter experts and as vendors there on the show. New Salt Laser, Sky Elements, Vecto Labs, Omnitech. Okay, the guy that runs Omnitech was in charge of running the International Space Station. Now, how do you get more credentialed than that? A guy that is trained to know what something observed in the nighttime sky is. Is that truly a UAP, or is that just Starlink, or is it a satellite, or is it a meteor? These are people that have the academic credentials and the work experience that, at their risk of even coming on the show, for them to fake something, that would be the dumbest mistake they could ever make.
Right.
And it's just simply not happening, folks. And I can say this because while I haven't met any of the people that I just listed off, I've never met Jim Royston. I've never met the guys from New Salt Laser or the guys from Sky Elements. I have met Pete Kelsey, and I can tell you that Pete Kelsey is cut from the same cloth and is a man of integrity, just as all the guys on the Skinwalker Ranch team are. This is not a man who is faking things. Pete is considered one of the foremost experts for imaging in the world. Just look at his resume of the places that he has done scans of. I mean, the guy knows what he's doing. And for this guy to suggest that Pete Kelsey or any of these guys are coming on the show and just, sensationalizing and fluffing things up to get ratings and to make things interesting, that's really lazy for people to accuse these people of this kind of thing happening. It's lazy. Show me absolute proof of why you say that is happening. And don't say, "Well, it just looks." No, okay, I get that it may look that way to you, but again, if you're feeling that way, you're clearly somebody that is not watching, and more succinctly, not paying attention to what is happening in these episodes of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. And I can't put it any more plainer than that. I have yet to come across anybody that says that it's all bullshit and nonsense that can substantiate and prove to me why that statement would be true. It's just like a lot of the debunkers out there, it's lazy, it's closed minded, it's inconvenient to their way of thinking. And then sometimes you get people that just simply want to be trolls and be assholes about it, and they're just doing it to stir shit up. That's what trolls do. They're lazy and they like to stir things up. They're doing it to provoke a reaction. And the best thing that any of us can do is just don't give them a reaction. Just deny them the opportunity of engagement. That's the best thing that you can do. Take the high road. And trust me, being a New Yorker, that's the last thing I want to do. I want to get in there and I want to tussle it up with them and I want to give them the ugly side of Brooklyn. But you're coming down to their level and they're going to beat you with their experience every time because they're fools. So again, I more as a reminder to myself than to anyone else, always remember to take the high road when those people come out of the woodwork. And they will come out of the woodwork. And Roger and I
Oh
have
yeah.
experienced a bit of it already, and I'm sure we're going to get even more of it as more people view and find out about our little podcast here. But folks, again, this episode for me was simply mind blowing. Again, jaw floor, jaw floor. Reality broken. Um, we've heard Travis Taylor say that to us so many times, Roger, where we're going to see things that is just going to break our perception of reality. And tonight, last night rather, that undeniably happened when I saw this episode. I'm still reeling from it, in a good way. Again, it doesn't scare me, doesn't freak me out. It's just I never, in my wildest dreams, thought that I would see something like this actually being a possibility. And again, I'm not saying that any of this has been conclusively proven. Just the mere fact that the data is showing this as a very real possibility is mind blowing and astounding enough to me. And so uh, I'm still waylaid from it, just simply still trying to absorb it. But more than anything, Roger, this episode excites and exhilarates me for what is coming up in the future. And it reinforces my belief that the team that we have assembled out there with Dr. Taylor, Eric Bard, Caleb Bench, Thomas Winterton, Dragon, and the guys from Omnitech and everybody that they're bringing on that ranch, we have the right team. There is such a synergy involved in this team, and it just, again, uh, onward and upward. I'm excited. Roger, your
Yeah.
closing thoughts.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I'm still processing that episode, and I it makes me think, what other exciting things that they are going to discover. And right, I have a feeling that these next several episodes are just going to continue to get more and more exciting, and they're going to discover more and more. And yeah, it'll be fun to talk about it. So I sure am excited. I do have a lot more questions than I have answers at this time, but like I stated before, I'm along for the ride, and I really enjoy the work and the dedication that the team does out there. And yeah, as long as they're doing this docuseries, I'm more than happy to do our weekly recap on all the amazing episodes. And definitely would love to hear your thoughts and your opinions on it. Um, what are your theories around there? And again, super exciting times to be alive and to really learn more about our place in the universe. So with that, I think I'll leave it there.
Awesome. Thanks, Raj. So, folks, we're going to be recording also a recap of the second episode of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. Roger and I are going to record that tomorrow, if, of course, Amazon can sort out the streaming issue, which I know Roger and I are not alone in being surprised with an episode from another show entirely, as opposed to see episode two of season two of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. So provided we can get that sorted out with Amazon by tomorrow evening, Roger and I are recording a recap of the most recent episode of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, and we'll be posting that right here on the Soul of the Unexplained YouTube channel. And once again, a very big thank you and welcome to all of our new subscribers. We hope that you enjoy what you've seen here. And for those of you that aren't subscribers yet, please hit that subscribe button down there on the bottom somewhere. And if you like what you saw, then give us a follow and subscribe, and you'll be notified every time Roger and I post new content to the Soul of the Unexplained YouTube channel. We're also on Facebook, so look for us there. And yeah, just feel free to come by and say hi anytime. And We got some other exciting stuff coming up, including a roundtable discussion that we are doing this Saturday to kind of commemorate the 1 year anniversary of David Grush's interview with News Nation that ended up with the historic hearing before members of the House of Representatives last year regarding UAPs and non-human intelligence. So that's all coming up within the next couple of days, folks. Thank you again for tuning into the Soul of the Unexplained. Roger and I will see you very soon. See ya.